Hello there, welcome to the channel. Today we're going to do another one of the complete install for beginners in my series. I've done Debian, Ubuntu, Mint. There's a few more Debian based I want to do, like MX Linux, but this is my favorite Arch based distro, especially for new users. I mean, everybody will go Manjaro, Manjaro, Manjaro. I have my problems with Manjaro, and I do not feel it is a new user friendly distro, and I'm sure people will call me nasty names for saying that, but I have my reasons, and that would take a whole video to explain. Okay, so Endeavor, the people who do Endeavor were some of the same people that did Antergos, and Antergos is my favorite, was my favorite Arch for many years. And so they had to quit that project for whatever reason, and 6 months, a year later, they came up with EndeavourOS. At first it was kind of crappy, but they have really cleaned it up, and you'll see it's extremely easy to install, and you'll find it's fairly easy to use. Before we go much further, please like, comment, and subscribe, please. We want to get this Linux information out to everybody, and that's the only way it'll show up on the YouTube algorithms. So the first thing, you have to go get it. You have to download it. You have to download the ISO. You want to go to their official website, EndeavourOS.com. If you're ever not quite sure, go to distrowatch.com. Go to distrowatch.com. Look for the drive and go to their homepage. Yes, my AC is coming on and off because, again, it's hot. This is going to be it for the summer. We're in Sacramento. It's June. It's going to be hot from now until September, October, maybe. Anyways, one thing I want to point out: a terminal-centric distro, blah 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 blah. This terminal-centric. If terminal commands scare you, or watching things happen in terminal scare you, this ain't for you. But this walks you through most of the things, and it's terminal-centric, but a lot of the things like Update Manager, you'll see it launches a terminal. You never had to put anything in. So if you want to be able to run around saying, by the way, I use Arch, or is it, I use Arch, by the way, you can do that with Endeavor. I wouldn't do that with Manjaro. And yes, there are crazy elitists in the Arch world that will go, no, it's not really Manjaro Arch unless it took you 67,000 hours to install it line by line. Yeah, no. So we're gonna, somewhere it says download. Alright, so am I not missing? Am I missing it? Is it okay? Because I'm stupid. Alright, up here, latest release. And you're just going to download it. This is one of the reasons why I always recommend Endeavor if you have NVIDIA cards. They're right at the top of the game. They're as good as it's going to get. As NVIDIA's crap Linux support, but Endeavor is going to be about as good as you can get if you have an NVIDIA machine. Okay, that's fine. I don't see a US, so I'm gonna go with a Canada, and then you download the ISO. If you have torrent set up, you tell it where to store it. I already have it, so there's no reason for me to do that. There it is. So we'll close that. No reason for you to watch me do it. The other thing you need to go get is a method to take that ISO, that raw data image, and turn it into a bootable image on a USB stick. There are 3 really good methods in Windows, because assuming you're brand new to Linux, you're probably coming from Windows. And that is Rufus, which is unique to Windows and is only available on Windows. As far as I know, it's not available on Mac either. And it's very good, fairly simple to use. Obviously, I can't show it because I'm not on a Windows machine. The other one is Ventoy. Ventoy is my favorite. You set up a USB stick to be your Ventoy stick, and then you can install as many USB ISOs as can fit on that USB stick, and you can boot them all. Well, occasionally you'll run into things that won't boot off Ventoy, and you'll have to go to this method, or Rufus, but I recommend this method because it's straightforward. There's less things to choose, so less things to make a mistake on. And it's extremely reliable. It produces both an MBR bootable and an EFI bootable on the same drive, on the same USB stick. It will boot either way depending on how you pick it. And as you can see, you can download it for Linux 64, Etcher for 32-bit Linux, also for Windows as an installer and Windows as a portable. Now, I believe that's just the exe, and that's the one I would recommend, the portable one. Etcher for Mac OS, I'm assuming is going to be very similar to Linux, as it's BSD based operating system. And so you just go ahead and you download that. Wherever you download it, you either install it or you launch it. In my case, it's an app image is what it gives to Linux, which means you can just launch it and it will look like this. Install your flash from a file. So you pick the file. I go to ISO. Go down to Endeavor. I say open. I say select output. Select. Okay, you click. That's an old name. Even though the disk has been formatted, it's hanging on to that old name. That's what was on it at one point. This is a good size, 8 GB. Why would you buy anything smaller? I mean, it obviously doesn't need the whole 8 gigabytes, but why would you buy anything small? Then you select it, and now we just flash it to that drive. In Linux, you're going to need a password. And it's going to get going. And it's going to take 5 or 6 minutes, and then it's going to take a few minutes to validate it. I'll try and show you how it when it finishes. Anyways, let's keep going. So you have your USB live / installer stick ready to go. You put it in your machine. You turn on your machine. Each machine has its own way of getting to boot from another device other than the internal drive or another image or whatever. Most of the time, a lot of times it's F12 while you're having your machines, like whether it's Asus or Lenovo or Dell or whatever your machine's little boot up icon looks like. Sometimes it'll tell you right on there what key to hit. Then you pick on it, and other ways to get to it are ESC, DEL, F1, F2, F4. So basically when your machine's coming up, you start tapping on the key. When it gets to that logo screen, if your machine blows right past the logo screen, as soon as you turn on, just start tapping. So once you have that, it's going to boot up and look like this. Now I'm putting it on a BIOS machine. It's in a VM, obviously. It's the only way I can show this and show how it boots and everything. This is a BIOS machine, so this is going to be the first choice. NVIDIA, fallback. This is a problem for some NVIDIA cards sometimes. But we're going to go with the default. Okay, my connection's established. Because I'm wired, if you have a Wi-Fi card, this is the time. Try to connect Wi-Fi before you do anything else. This is where you figure out whether your Wi-Fi is going to work with Linux or not. 95 to 98% of the time, not a problem. So 1 or 2%. So I like the way it has it pretty much in order that you're going to need it, except Partition Manager is over here. This is G part, but I think it's really nice that they have it right there on the welcome screen. So we're going to pretend that this is an unallocated piece of the drive that you freed up from Windows. This is a little too small. It's better if it was 64 gigabytes or greater. But for demonstration purposes, it'll install on this, it'll work. Won't be able to do much once I'm done, but I'm not planning to. So you want something a little bigger. Since this is a new hard drive, you will not do this part on your drive if this is just a section of your drive. I'm only doing this because it's a whole new drive. And yes, I'm using GPT, even though I'm about to install it as BIOS. And I recommend that if you have a BIOS only machine. 99% of them will be able to do it this way, and it's much better. Even if it's a legacy only, BIOS only, CSM only, however you call it. So you apply that. Now, we're back to, here's my section. Oh, a quick thing about freeing up space on Windows. You have to go into their partition manager. You cannot do it from gparted. I don't care what people say. It's part of why I don't like alongside option on the install. I can't be 100% sure that it does all that correctly. I know the partition manager inside Windows will resize its partition correctly. And so you free up some space. First thing we're going to do is we're going to make an EFI partition. I'm going to make it 150 because the Windows EFI is going to be 100. And I just, in glancing at it, I want to be able to tell at a glance which one is which. We're going to call this a FAT32. We're going to add this. Now we're going to add a swap partition. Typically, you want full or up to 8 gigabytes of RAM of Linux swap, depending on how much RAM you have. Oh, flash complete. Let's look at that. And there it says flash complete. So however many minutes that took. And it's flash another one. I don't want to flash another one. I'm done. Goodbye. Alright, back to this. I'm just going to use a 1 gigabyte. It's good to use some. Even if you have like ton RAM in your machine. Linux works most efficiently when it has a way to temporarily move unused pages to. And so you need some kind of swap. There are other ways. There's something called swap file, but this is the most common way, and you can look that up if you don't want a swap partition. Look up swap file, all one word, in Linux. I'm going to add this one, except I got stupid, so I'm going to get rid of it. Try again. Just to say Linux swap. There you are. You know, how did I know right away? Because it uses these different colors and that. I'm used to seeing the green followed by the red, so if I don't, I know I did something wrong. Alright, so I'm going to make 2 ext4 partitions. One for the OS file system, and one for home. This makes your life a lot easier if the file system ever gets corrupted. You can reinstall the file system without wiping out all your data and program settings. $20 gigabytes or so is a minimum. for most Linux. There are some that will do 10, but for the mainstream ones like this, you're going to stick with 20 gigabytes as your minimum. I would suggest strongly you do 32 or so. If you're planning to add a lot of programs, that's where they're going to live, so you want to make sure that's big enough. And I've used 32 on machines for years and install all kinds of crazy stuff and never have a problem. Unless you're doing a lot of VMs. And then you are going to want a much bigger file system partition. So we're going to add that. And then the last amount is going to be where /home goes. Okay? We're going to apply that. Close that. And are we done? No, we're not. We have to set the flags for this. Manage flags. If you're on a UEFI system, you're going to do ESP and boot. Come on up here so we can see you better. We're going to do ESP. You click one, it clicks the other. Boot and ESP go together. Close that. Now this is ready to go on a UEFI system. This is a BIOS system, so I'm going to change that to BIOS Grub. By the way, Windows cannot use a GPT partition drive in BIOS mode. It insists on UEFI. Linux and BSD can do it this way. Alright? Now, this is ready to go. So, we're going to start the installer. I'm going to go online. If you go offline, this is what you get, this XFCE desktop, and we can go online and pick it again, but that's the only choice you get if you do offline. So I'll do online. Remember, I made sure I was connected to the internet because I'm wired. You want to make sure you're connected to the internet, obviously, before you start the installer. If you forgot, cancel it and do it. Welcome to the EndeavourOS installer. This is a Calamari's installer. You may have seen this exact installer used by Debian and a few others. Pick your time zone, say next. Pick your language, say next. Did I skip something? Pick your keyboard, no. Alright, install alongside, no. Replace a partition. If you're planning to replace a partition that has another Linux, you can do that. Erase disk. Use the whole thing. I'm not a keen fan about the way it will do it, how much swap it'll choose to use. Doing it no separate /home usually. So I like to do manual partition. On some others, they call it something else. So we're going to say next. Okay. So the first thing we're going to start with is where the main file system goes. On some systems, you just click or right click. I'm doing both, nothing's happening. I can hit edit to edit it, or I can double click. It brings up the same thing. I'm going to format that. We're going to keep it as ext4. We're going to make slash. We don't need any flag set here. We're going to say OK. We're going to do this. Come over here. If we were just reinstalling the file system and not a brand new install, we would leave the format, and then your data in /home and your program settings will not be lost. They'll be carried over. But this is brand new, so I know I'm going to format it. I'm going to say OK. Now, we want to verify it's set to the master boot record of the drive, not of the system partition. Some will give you a choice of like VDA1, VDA2. Make sure it's at the drive. We're going to say next. Oh, look at this. GPT is the best option for all systems. It supports such a setup with BIOS systems too. Configure GPT blah 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 blah. I go back and let's create an 8. Well, it only calls for an 8 megabit formatted partition. Okay. With the BIOS grub. So we did all that, except we made ours a lot bigger. Okay. Now we need to pick a desktop. I'm going to pick Budgie. The reason I'm going to pick Budgie is Endeavor does it the second best implementation. The best are the people who created Budgie, which is Solus. I can't recommend Solus to new Linux users for a whole variety of reasons. But you can get their Budgie desktop. Turns out that's something you like, but obviously you can pick whichever one you want, including the exe4, or I cannot stand these stripped down ones, LXDE or LXQT. You really have to have close to nothing of a machine that you can only run these two. exe4 will probably run and be better. Budgie's a little bigger, being based on GNOME 3, I believe. So we're going to pick Budgie and say next. Well, that gives you another chance to pick other desktops, but I'm going to stick with Budgie. Long-term supported kernel. In addition, it gives you a good fallback if a new kernel is weird. So you can pick that if you want. I don't have a lot of drive space, so I'm not going to do it at the moment. You can see what all it's going to install if you needed to dig all the way into it, but just go with everything for LGT. Printing support. If you're planning to connect a printer, whether directly or wireless, you'll need to install this. I'm not gonna, so I don't need it. So next, we're gonna do I want it to log in automatically without asking for the password. You can say next. I'm kind of reading it all over, making sure. Okay, so that looks good. Let's install. Okay, so I'm going to pause this because it's going to take a few minutes. Okay, and we're back. What am I being confused by? Okay, restart now. Done. Go back to a full screen. And look, we're up. There's a little... I like this over some of the other welcome screens because it pretty much you can follow it in order. A little box down there brings this up. So if you need to change what you're using for your audio, and that's right here. Quick little calendar. First thing we're going to do is update mirrors. Come on, baby. There we go. I'm going to keep it to the United States. I'll probably have like too many of them. Say okay, you'll change it to whatever countries you feel are best for you. And see what I was talking about? It's running it in a terminal, but you didn't actually put in any terminal commands. Okay, once it's done, we're going to save this. Of course, it wants a password. Welcome to Linux. This is part of its security. Alright, now we're going to update the system. And again, it's issuing a command. And there was nothing to update because we were online. And it updated as we went. Okay. That's, package cleanup. Going to do it weekly, keeping 3. You can change that if you want. And that's it. There you go. We've installed and updated Endeavor with Budgie. You'll notice it looks an awful lot like kind of a combination of FXCE, mint, cinnamon and this part here reminds me more of gnome. There's some other places I saw gnome, and has a little gnome footprint, so it's a modified gnome. Anyways, have a good day. Thank you very much. Good luck on your Linux journey, and please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Have a nice day.